If you're tired of kids just playing with the materials at your word work center, these simple ideas will give them a purpose. After decades in the classroom, I've learned that most teachers think they need dozens of different games to keep kids engaged. But today, we're going to make it really simple and break it down into 4 categories. And once you see these 4 categories, planning your word work center is going to be so much easier. By the end of this episode, you're going to have enough word work ideas to keep your center fresh all year long, using simple materials that you probably already have in your classroom. So let's get started. Category number 1 is called Build a Word. And let's begin with my all-time favorite manipulative, which is magnetic letters and some picture cards. And stick around because I'm going to show you how I use the exact same picture cards over and over again without kids getting bored. So the first activity, and this is really simple because that's what you want, especially at the beginning of the year, is to simply put out a stack of picture cards in a basket and have kids build the word that matches that picture with the magnetic letters. At the beginning of the year, I like to start with CVC words, and I'd always begin with short A words like mat, can, tab, words like that. You can have a stack of picture cards in a little basket and a tray of magnetic letters. Kids can just build the words on the table. Simple as that. Sometimes I liked having word building cards like this that had a prompt for which letters the kids would need, and then the kids would just push the letters up into the boxes to build the words. As the year goes on, you just swap the picture cards for long vowel cards, vowel teams, blends, or digraphs. All right, number 2 is called Spin a Word, and for this one, the kids choose a spin a word card and they use a paperclip and pencil as the spinner. First, they spin the onset and then they spin the rhyme, and then they can build the word that they spun with the magnetic letters. And then they have to decide if it's a real word or a nonsense word and check the box. So this is a good one for practicing sounding out simple words. All right, number 3 is called Missing Letters. I had these missing letter mats that I'd put at my center, and then kids would look at the pictures and the letters and they would sound it out to decide what letter was missing, and then they would put the correct magnetic letter in the spot. The nice thing about this activity is you can sort the cards by having kids do all the beginning sounds or all ending sounds or all medial sounds. And then once they get good at that, you can just mix them up. And of course, these are all CVC words, but you could do this with blends, digraphs, long vowels, really any kind of words. So with just one manipulative like magnetic letters, you can do so many different types of games and word building activities. Now, let's see what happens when you switch to a different manipulative. Let's move on to building words with unifix cubes. Most teachers would think that they need an entirely new set of activities to use with unifix cubes, but really, we're just going to use the same skills and many of the same materials. And in a minute, you're going to start to notice a pattern that makes planning your word work center so much easier. I know you can buy unifix cubes with the letters on them, but I had so many extra in my math tub, I just made my own by writing the letters with permanent marker. All right, the first activity is ABC order. All you have to do for this is to simply have kids snap the letter cubes together in ABC order. And you can do the same thing with magnetic letters too. All right, number 2 is word ladders. You can use those same picture cards that you had for the magnetic letters and have kids build words with the unifix cubes. And you can have kids build word ladders by switching the different letters to build new words. So for this one, you would have a word letter like the one in the picture, and kids start at the bottom and then they have to build the word that matches the picture. And then they move up a rung on the ladder and they have to change one letter cube to build the new word. And as they build the new words, they write them on the rungs of the worksheet and they keep going until they reach the top. All right, game number 3 is called Word Detective. And for this one, kids play with a partner and they can use the same picture cards, and one person chooses a card and gives clues about the picture. And then the other person has to try and build the word that they think it is with the unifix cubes. So the one student might say stuff like, this is a pet that you might have and it has a long tail and it barks. And then the other kid would build the word dog. All right, let's move on to word building with letter cards. These are great to use in pocket charts. You can use the same picture cards and place them in the pocket chart and then have kids build the words with the letter cards in the pocket chart. So you can see that one set of picture cards can be used in so many different ways, and that's the secret. It's not about constantly making new games. It's about finding simple activities that can grow with your students using the same materials. And that idea is going to become even better when we move on to our next category, which is word sorting. and this is probably the easiest category to differentiate for your students. One of my favorite word sorts is called shape sort, and this is great for kids who need help with visual discrimination, and that is to sort letters with sticks or circles, humps, dots, or tails. You can put 2 or 3 headers in a pocket chart, and then kids can sort the letters under the correct header. Or you can put the headers on a magnetic board, and then the kids could sort magnetic letters. You can also have kids do word sorts. They can sort words with 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 letters, or you can have them sort words by how many syllables are in each word. You could have word cards with short vowels and long vowels, and then you could have them sort those into 2 columns. You can also work on grammar skills and have kids sort nouns and verbs and adjectives. So you can see how one simple sorting routine can work for almost any phonics or grammar skill that you're teaching. And my favorite part of word sorts is how easy they are to differentiate for every level in your classroom. An easy way to do it is to have 3 different baskets with activities. You could have one sort for struggling learners, one for on-level, and one for advanced learners. And now one pocket chart can serve all the students in your classroom. Now, if your kids are anything like mine, they're going to really like this next category, and that one is writing words, which might surprise you. For these activities, you're going to want a variety of things for kids to write with, because a lot of kids who don't love writing are much more willing to write when it feels like a game. So one of the best things is a small dry erase board and a basket of colored expo markers. You can have them do something similar as word ladders, where they're changing one letter in each word to make a new one. A fun way to do that is to have picture cards on a ring, and the kids can start anywhere on the ring and write the word on their dry erase board, and then they flip to the new picture and decide which letter they have to change, and then they erase it and write it in a new color. And then they just keep going, flipping through the pictures and changing one letter each time. It's a great activity for helping kids think about the sounds that they hear in the words and where each sound is in the word. Another fun activity that kids love is to write the room. You can hang different pictures or word cards around the room and have kids take a clipboard and pencil around to hunt for the words and write them down. I personally liked hanging the pictures because then the kids really have to think about how to write that word. But for your struggling writers, you could simply hang alphabet letters or the words themselves for kids to copy and practice good letter formation. You can have kids write words in sand trays. For this, you just need a shallow tray with either sand or salt in it, and then a stack of picture cards. Kids choose the picture and write the word with their finger in the sand. It's great for those kinesthetic learners. And you can do the same thing and have kids write words with magnadoodles. Again, the task stays the same. Kids are still practicing reading and writing words, but they're just using different materials to complete the task. And then finally, our last category is the one that gets even your most reluctant learners excited, and it was always the most popular area of my Word Work Center, and that's making words. This is similar to building words, but the kids are using materials that they actually have to mold into the letter shapes. So for making words, they can use things like wiki sticks, which are sort of like wax-coated strings, or they could use Play-Doh. For that, kids can roll the Play-Doh into little snakes and then form the letters to make words. You can also have a set of alphabet stamps for kids to stamp the words on paper. You can have papers with the squares on them for like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 letter words, and then kids can choose a picture or a word card and stamp the words. Another fun thing that kids enjoy is stringing letter beads to make words. They could make sight word bracelets, sort of like friendship bracelets, but they could make one word on each bracelet and then stack them on their wrists and practice reading them. So now kids aren't just reading and spelling words, they're actually creating something with the words. Another activity is to have blank books at your Word Work Center and have the kids make little phonics books. For instance, if you're working on long A words, you could have a basket of picture cards, and then the kids could make their book of long A words. They could stamp or write the word on each page, and then they could illustrate it. And I know I told you there were 4 categories, but I'm going to throw in a bonus 5th category, which is seasonal activities. My kids loved whenever I would put seasonal games at our Word Work Center. It just kind of created a little excitement. And so I'd put out something new every month. So for instance, in October, we had a game called Spooky Spelling, and they had to write their spelling words on the worksheet in white crayon, and then they would paint over it with watercolor paints, and it would make the word magically appear. They loved that one. In December, we had a fun game called What's in Santa's Sack, and they had to pull the toy pictures from the sack and then put them in ABC order. And then another fun game for January was called Feed the Winter Friends, and on that one they had to feed the correct character the right S blend. So those special activities every month added a little fun and excitement to the center, while we still had our regular activities there as well. These seasonal games are all part of my monthly centers bundle on TPT, and I'll put a link to that down below. And before we wrap up, there's one final thing I want you to remember, because it's where a lot of teachers accidentally make the word work center harder than it needs to be. The temptation is to look at all these ideas and think you need to do all of them. But the key is to keep the routines the same. You do not need 50 different activities at this center. Kids thrive on predictable routines. So keep the 4 categories the same: building, sorting, writing, and making words. And then simply rotate the words and the manipulatives in the center. And then throw in a fun seasonal game or 2 every month. And that's what keeps kids excited about going to the center, independent, and it's going to save you hours of prep. Now, you got plenty of activities, but activities alone aren't going to make centers run smoothly. Today, we covered what kids can do at the WordWorks Center, and next week, we're going to talk about how to train students to be independent at centers, so you're not constantly answering questions and solving problems during your small group time. You're not going to want to miss that one. See you next week.